Okay, welcome everyone. Wow, it's really good to see so many faces, to know that we're all together. I send you a physically distant yet emotionally connected hug from myself and from all of us at Omega. We miss everyone and we send you health and best wishes during this time. So, you're probably like me, you've been relying on your devices to connect with people. It's kind of a strange new normal. And I know for myself, with so much stuff zipping around the internet and the television news and Twitter and Facebook and podcasts and funny memes and everything that we're watching seems like all day long, I'm having to train myself to step away from the devices every now and then, to step away from my machines. Maybe you're the same way. It's like, how many times do I have to tune in to the grim news? Like, how many times do I have to watch the news? I know things are changing really fast, but I've decided I'm only watching the news once early in the day and then in the evening, not before I go to bed. And I'm turning off Facebook and Twitter and things like that and taking breaks. And I hope you are too. And therefore, I'm really grateful you've chosen to be with us today, to be with me. I know that there's a lot you could have chosen to do, maybe even just go outside. So I'm grateful we're together. It's been fascinating to be connected mostly through machines to each other, and also things like, learning how to wash my hands. How many times can I learn to wash my hands? I think I know it now. Or checking to see if my hand sanitizer is going to arrive in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I kind of thought at the beginning of the pandemic that it would be sort of like a quiet spiritual retreat, but instead it's turned into a kind of noisy situation. And I'm hoping today in our time together, we're going to kind of try to calm it down a little bit. There's about 1,400 of us on this Zoom call and many more on Facebook Live. So it's very exciting to be with you. We can't be together on Omega's campus at the moment, so we can be together this way. And personally, I'm really grateful for it, to tune into my community. It makes me feel really happy. What we're going to do over the next 45 minutes to an hour is I'm going to talk to you a little bit. I'm going to read you a passage from a book that's really been helping me. And I'm going to lead us in a practice. And then I'm going to take some questions at the end. I'll tell you how to submit those questions to us a little later on. Right now, let's not do the questions. Let's just stay together. Now, before I start, I just want to say that I know that each of us is in a different situation. I mean, we're all in the same situation. The pandemic is an amazing unifier because we're all going through the same thing, but we're also going through different things. And I think it's really important to remember that. I try to remind myself every day things like, there are some people who are still going to work and putting their lives at risk for us. Healthcare providers, food providers, service providers. They're having one kind of experience. Some people are having an experience of being laid off from work and being really scared for their finances, for their families. Some of us are not laid off, but maybe we're afraid we're going to be, or our salaries are reduced, healthcare gone. So that's another kind of person going through what we're all going through together. Some people have kids at home and they're also trying to work and they're going crazy and they're not used to being with their kids all the time. That's another situation. Some people have no one at home and they're lonely. They're alone. They're scared. That's a whole other way. I know some people have family members who've come to their house from worse places and they're with a big group of people and they're not used to it. So whatever you're going through, wherever you are on that spectrum of effect from the pandemic, I hope today what we do together will give you a little breathing room, a little peace, a little sense of community. I think one thing we all are in is a state of shock. You know, saying you're in a state of shock is actually a physical condition from trauma, either a physical trauma or an emotional one. And I think we're all in a state of shock. Unless you were an epidemiologist or a climate scientist, you probably didn't know this was going to happen. I didn't know it was going to happen, and it happened so fast. And when the rug gets pulled out from you, especially collectively, you go into shock. And I think it's good to acknowledge that we're all in a state of collective shock. A friend of mine texted me this morning. She knew I was going to be doing this. And she wrote to me, "Can you please address those of us who have not had one single creative moment, nor been productive with the oodles of time we now have, nor been focused enough to even read? Can you give us permission to stare into space?" And I think that's another thing that a lot of us are feeling. We thought when this all started, maybe we were going to finally clean the closet out or take up watercolors or something. And instead, there's this sense of not being able to concentrate, not being able to do anything. So give yourself a break, especially right now in our time together. Just to be a human in a state of shock at what has happened to us. Let's start right now with taking a few breaths together, and then we're going to set an intention about what we might want to get out of this next hour. Sometimes when you set an intention, it's a way of getting the most out of something. Like, I want to get this out of it. And then when you lose your train of thought or your attention goes away, you can bring yourself back to, oh yeah, this is what I want to get out of today. So let's just together take a nice deep breath in and let it out with a loud sigh. Ah. I can't hear you. I can see some of you, and I don't see you going, ah. So let's do that, okay? One big breath in and let it out. Ah. And one more time. And when you let it out, just feel your shoulders drop, your jaw drop, all that tension just flush out of you. Ah. Close your eyes and ask yourself, what do I want to awaken from this experience today? What do I want to get out of this? What's my intention for even tuning in today? Okay, so come on back. Now, I'm a bookish sort of person. You might see the books behind me, and I have, that's, maybe about 1/80th of what I have. So I turn to books when I go through a hard time, and this is a hard time. And I've rediscovered a book that's helped me in the past. And this is the book, Man's Search for Meaning. Have any of you ever read that book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning? Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist, an early psychiatrist, and also a Holocaust survivor. He wrote the book in 1946 after World War II. And he wrote it as a meditation on what helped him survive Auschwitz and then thrive afterwards, after losing everyone, his beloved wife, children, family, country. And he also wrote it for other people because he didn't see any hierarchy in pain. Like, it didn't matter that he went through the Holocaust, but we might be going through something else. He wrote this book so anyone could choose to survive and thrive. So we may not be going through a concentration camp experience, But we are going through a very hard, dark time. This is our generation's World War II. This is a big deal. So his book has had a lot of meaning for me, and I'm going to read you a little passage from it. We were at work in a trench. The dawn was gray around us. Gray was the sky above, gray the snow in the pale light of dawn, gray the rags in which my fellow prisoners were clad, and gray their faces. I was again conversing silently with my wife, or perhaps I was struggling to find the reason for my sufferings and my slow dying. In a last violent protest against the hopelessness of imminent death, I sensed my spirit piercing through the enveloping gloom. I felt it transcend that hopeless, meaningless world, and from somewhere I heard a victorious yes. In answer to my question, was there any ultimate purpose in existence? I heard yes. And at that moment, a light was lit in a distant farmhouse which stood at the horizon as if painted there in the midst of the miserable gray of the dawning morning in Bavaria. And I heard, et lux in tenebris lucet, and the light shineth in the darkness. And for hours I stood hacking at the icy ground, and the guard passed by, insulting me. And once again I communed with my beloved wife. More and more I felt she was present, that she was with me. The feeling was very strong. She was there. Then at that very moment, a bird flew down silently and perched just in front of me on the heap of soil which I had dug up from the ditch, and looked steadily at me. And this thought came to me: everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. What is really needed is a fundamental change in our attitude toward life. We have to learn ourselves, and furthermore, we can teach those despairing around us that it does not really matter what we expect from life, but rather what life expects from us. So I want to go over three things he says in there. The first one is, and the light shineth in the darkness, and that's from the Bible. That line is not, and it was always light. It was always rainbows and unicorns. No, it says, and the light shineth in the darkness. And what that says to me is that us humans, we always get served darkness. It is not always light. Sometimes the darkness comes just to individuals, sickness, divorce, loss of job. Sometimes it's really big. It hits the whole earth community. We got one of them now. And what this line says to me, and what Viktor Frankl says throughout his book, is that unless you accept the darkness, unless you say, yeah, dark time, you can't find the light. If we're always trying to avoid what has happened and not ask it what it's come to teach us, we don't get to find the light. So that line, and the light shineth in the darkness, tells me it's okay for me to feel dark. It's okay to feel confused. I mean, all day long I ride this wave. I'm dark, I'm confused, I'm scared, I'm impatient, I'm in shock. And then I let myself feel it. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not some weirdo for feeling this. All over the world, billions of people are feeling this. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with me. This is a dark time. And then I can settle into it. And then, like he says, that I felt my spirit piercing through that enveloping gloom. And then I heard the victorious yes. So all day long, I bet we all ride that same wave, feeling the darkness, letting ourselves feel it, searching for the light, waiting for that little bird to fly down like Viktor Frankl found and show us the light. That's one thing I got from that. Then there's that famous line of his. If you've never read the book, maybe you've heard this quote of his. Everything can be taken from us but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. One thing I'm praying for myself every day is I feel there's been like a decline in attitude in America and probably all over the world in the past years, way before COVID-19. There's been a shift of attitude from optimism and cooperation to anger and blame and tribalism and shutting our hearts toward each other. And that is not an attitude I want to water in myself during these times. I'm interested in watering the seeds of optimism and love and acceptance, even of the people I don't like, even of the political figures I don't like. I'm interested to see if what's happening from COVID-19 when it's all over is if an attitude of love and strength can arise from the ashes of this time. Not everybody, but that doesn't matter. How about from us? How about from me? So that's one thing from his line, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude at any given time, in any circumstance. And number 3, he said, it does not really matter what we expect from life, but rather what life expects from us. I love that. Life expecting something from us. Life expecting something from this gift of being human. The other day, my husband and I were kind of freaking out together, having one of those repetitive conversations of like, what's going to happen to our finances? Will we ever get to see our kids, some who live in California, Texas? Will we see them? Will we see the grandkids? How are we going to survive? We were kind of each feeding off each other's fear and negativity. And my husband said at one point, I think we're having a tantrum. And I loved that. I loved the word tantrum because having raised 3 kids and now grandkids, I know tantrums really well. I know what they look like. There was a famous tantrum one of my kids had that we refer to in my family, the banana tantrum. I don't know, maybe he was 2.5. I gave him a banana. I peeled it first. Huge mistake. He did not want it peeled. He wanted the banana unpeeled so he could peel it. First, I tried to reason with him. It's peeled. It's the same thing. No. Then I offered him another one. No. Then I literally tried to crazy glue the peel back around the banana. That's how crazy parents can get. Nothing worked. He just fell on the floor, hysterical crying, angry, distraught. And that's kind of what I feel like often during the day. I don't want this. I don't want this to happen. I don't want COVID-19 pandemic to wreak havoc on my personal life, my organization that's really struggling, our finances, my husband's business, my kids, my blah, blah, blah. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want it. Well, the banana has been peeled and offered to us. So, as Viktor Frankl says, doesn't really matter what we expect from life. I did not expect this. I do not want this, but rather what life expects from us. So this came to us. Other smarter people than myself have been saying for years it was coming because of the choices we've made as a global community, environmentally, what we buy, how we live, how we travel, the one world community, a beautiful thing, but also we're sharing everything now, including a virus. This is it. Here it is. We can either have a tantrum or we can say, what do you expect from us? Life, COVID-19. What do you expect from us? How are we going to rise to this? The world will change. And if it changes for the better, it'll have a lot to do with what each one of us chose to do. That doesn't mean you have to go out and become a first responder. It's really as simple and harder, actually, in the way we treat the people in our house, in the way we reach out to a neighbor who maybe can't go shopping, in the way we expand our circles and through love and acceptance and kind of make a commitment to be the opposite of the bad behaviors that have been going on in our culture for the past few years. I kind of feel we were made for this. This is our generation's big challenge. And all of us who are in the spiritual community, who are building our backbone through meditation and spiritual practice and therapy and all the things we've been doing to hone ourselves, we were made for this. This is our time. So, easier said than done. Right? Myself too. I can descend into a full-on banana peel tantrum all the day long. So I've been relying on my meditation practice, and I want to lead us in one now. This is a practice I have taught before. Any of you who've taken any of my workshops, I've taught it. I've called it different things. And today I'm going to call it the strong and kind practice. So let's start. Let's start our meditation. I want to start it just by a basic meditation posture. I think most of you who are tuning in have had some degree of meditation practice, but if you haven't, it doesn't matter, because the thing about meditation is every time you sit down to do it, you're a beginner. So you might have gotten the instructions to have a nice straight back, and that's such a great instruction, because a straight back tells you, I am a noble human being. You know that saying, I've got your back. Well, when you have a straight back, you're telling your whole body and spirit, I've got your back, I've got you. So just feel your back straight. And if it's uncomfortable, you can lean back against your chair or wherever you're sitting. And at the same time that your back is straight, feel your shoulders drop. You can actually have an awake, straight back and a soft shoulders, soft jaw, open heart, soft belly. Both of these can happen at the same time. That's the great thing about meditation. That's the mindfulness attitude, is awake and strong, soft and open. So let's just feel that in our body right now. Straight back, soft front, strong and kind. Every time you might feel yourself losing connection to the practice or your mind is wandering, come back to your strong back and your soft front. Okay, so this particular meditation practice is based on some statues you may have seen of the Buddha. I'm going to move my chair back a little. You ever seen a statue like this? Sometimes he's standing, sometimes he's sitting, sometimes it's the female goddess Kuan Yin. She's got her hand like this and her hand like this. So those are in the yogi and Buddhist traditions. Those are called mudras, where you have your hands that indicate a certain attitude. Kind of like Viktor Frankl talking about choosing an attitude. So we're going to play around with those two hand gestures and attitudes now. So I'd like you to take your back, your strong back, your soft front, close your eyes, and bring your breath nice and slow in, out. Get comfortable with that posture of strength and kindness. And take your left hand and put it on your chest, your heart center. And just breathe into that soft spot right now. You know, sensitive people have been told forever not to feel so much. You're too sensitive. You should have closure. Lock it up and get it together. And so when we feel grief or love, tenderness or anger, or all the things that live in our heart, we try to shut it down. Well, forget about that right now. Just feel what's in your heart and label all of it good. It's good. Don't turn away from what's in your heart. There is so much in our hearts right now. There's a lot of loss and grief. There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of prayers that maybe this could change us. Whatever is in there, fear, anger, all the way down to real despair, all the way up to enormous joy, just let it all be. If you can be welcoming and empathetic to what's inside you, you can do that to what's inside others. So now take that left hand and put it in the Buddha's position, the cup. It's like a cup holding rain. And you can rest that on your knee or just hold it lightly in front of you. And I want you to feel, as you close your eyes, hold your back nice and straight. I want you to feel, I can hold the pain of my own beautiful, tender self with gentleness and forgiveness. And I can hold the whole world in this cup. I am so open and so compassionate. I can hold it all. This is a bottomless cup. And now put that hand down. Take your posture of strength and kindness and put your right hand up in that stop sign. You can even stand if you want and see what it feels like to have this strong sense of self, boundaries, strength, nobility. When the hand is like this, the Buddhists call it the gesture of fearlessness. It was said that the Buddha once did this amongst his disciples when a wild elephant was charging, and all he had to do was put his hand out like this, and he tamed the elephant. That is the gesture of, I've got this. I can do this. I have a strong, noble, fearless, boundaried self within me. So I want you to feel that. Feel yourself like the noble person who can handle this. Okay, now put that hand down. Now in Buddhist iconography and culture, these two mudras, they're rarely done alone. Because if you're two like this, you can kind of be an aggressive, almost like asshole, like, I got this. Or if you're two like this, you can drown in the cup. You can drown from being oversensitive. I have both drowned and been a jerk at different times. I think we all have. Some of us are way more like this. Some of us are way more like this. And the reason this is done together is we're seeking balance. We're seeking strength, and we're seeking softness, tenderness, especially towards ourselves, forgiveness. And that's why we want to hold them together. So let's just experience right now what it feels like to be strong and tender. While you're feeling that combo of strength and tenderness, I'm just going to read you a little thing I got the other day from a Hopi elder. She wrote this as a way of helping us stay strong and open during these times. This is what she wrote: stay in meditation and strength and openness as I read this. She said, don't feel guilty about being happy and strong during this difficult time. It is through joy that one resists. And when the storm passes, each of you will be very important in the reconstruction of a new world. You need to be open and strong. And for that, there is no other way than to maintain a beautiful and bright vibration. Now let's just sit silently. You can put your hands down and see if we can feel together the beautiful and bright vibration that is all around us, ready to be poured into our cup and offered to the world when we tune in. Okay, thanks. Come on back. You know, you can do this practice whenever you want. Whatever it is that you found this morning doing that practice, it's always in you. You didn't cook something new up. That's in you, available. So I recommend doing something. I've gotten to the point I've done that particular practice so much. All I have to do is do this every now and then. I kind of remind my body and my whole spirit what I'm wanting to achieve. Sometimes when I'm feeling too much like this, I'll just go like that, or the opposite. Sometimes all I do is like strong back, soft front. That's like as good as a 20-minute meditation practice sometimes. So I welcome you to choose to use any of that. So I'm going to take some questions now. And again, if you want to write one in, you go down to the chat button and you write a short question. You click on it and write a short question. And you can ask about whatever you want about what's going on now in your life around the pandemic. So, Stephen asks me, I have a dear friend on a ventilator, and how can I deal with that? Wow. That goes back to what I said earlier, that some of us are on a ventilator, and some of us have a friend on a ventilator, and some of us have a whole other story. Sometimes I forget, Stephen, during all this, that there actually are people fighting for their lives right now because of the pandemic. So how can you be there for someone, but you can't be there with them, can't touch them, they can't look at you? I mean, maybe you can do what we're doing now, but maybe he's so out of it that he's struggling for life and can't even do that. You know, I've been so blessed to have worked at Omega for more than 40 years. And so I have had the pleasure of working with many, many teachers from so many different traditions. And many of those teachers have a way of knowing for sure that there's a way to connect with people without any of the normal forms of communication through prayer. If he's feeling well enough and he's actually taking phone calls, or someone can tell him something like, at 2:00, your friend Stephen is going to be sending you just an enormous infusion of love and health. And he's actually got 30 friends of yours doing the same thing. So tune in and we're going to do that together. I'm sure you all know this. There are many clinical studies that show that that kind of remote prayer actually helps people. So maybe, Stephen, you can do that. And even if you can't tell him you're doing that, you can do that. So let's see. Ginny asks, how to deal with fear and panic coming from my teen children. First of all, just having teen children, I'm with you, Ginny. I know that just in regular life, having teen children is a massive spiritual practice of staying centered. And now kids, especially because of the connectivity online, are getting so much information. False information, true information, too much information. So the first thing I would suggest is, if at all possible, can you limit their screen time some? Can you teach them by example? PS. Sometimes we'll tell the kids, get off your phone, and meanwhile we're on ours. Can you have like a family agreement of how much screen time, especially around the pandemic and the fearful messages that are coming from everywhere? Can you limit their screen time and get outside and get in their bodies and exercise and eat well, all the things you know that brings fear down? Can you teach them in some way that seems cool? Good luck with that. Some form of meditation. Can you teach them the practice we did today? Can you get a book? There are books actually for teenagers about meditation and ways to calm the nervous system. Can you teach them what you know, and they may have been closed to you before, but they may be more open now? Can you be a leader for them in modeling some form of peace of mind, hope? And also, one thing that I actually believe, when this is done, and that may not mean in a few months, that may mean in a few years, we can be better from this. We can be a better society, and you can teach them that humans learn the hard way, and we're all learning the hard way. Let's see. Carol says, I'm the strong one in the family now, so how do I replenish myself? I love that question. When it was time for me to start preparing for being with you today, I said to my husband, I better get inspired. I got to inspire some people. I better get inspired. The first thing to understand when you're the strong one, it doesn't mean you're always strong. You should allow yourself, even if you have to go in the bathroom, shut the door, and freak out, you should allow yourself to let that move through your body and not expect, as the strong one, that you're always strong. If you're always making yourself be strong, you're not going to make it. So you can let the people know in your life, I've got this, don't worry about me. But sometimes I'm going to freak out. Sometimes I am not going to look like the strong one. And that's okay, because strong people are also flexible. Strength and flexibility. You can bend all the way down to despair, but you're resilient. You know how to get back up. You can model that for them. Don't think you have to constantly be like the strong saintly type. You can admit to people that sometimes you're weak, but what you really want to be is resilient. You want to show the people relying on you that even when you fall, you can get back up. Let's see. Casey G wants to know, as an artist, how best to be of service by sending out visualization to the world. Oh, artists. Hello, artists. I love you. This is a time for art. This is a time not to think that art is not relevant. Art is so relevant now. Have any of you watched some of the home music concerts that well-known and not so well-known musicians are doing? All over the world, you can tune into the most amazing concerts these days for free. Just well-known folks sitting in their living room singing you their hits. Thank you to them. Thank you to the museums who have opened up their whole museums so you can see every exhibit from every museum in the world. Art, it's so healing, it's so illuminating, it's so generative of those best human tendencies. And writing, I mean, I have gone back to the books I love. So artists, I just think by just doing your art and being creative heals yourself, and then offering it in whatever way you can, bravely, courageously. You know, get over your imposter syndrome once and for all, like embrace your artistry and share it with people for the betterment of all. Art and beauty saves the world. Let's see. Joseph S. asks, how to avoid the repetition of each day? Oh, goodness. I've been calling this time Groundhog Day, you know, like from the movie Groundhog Day. It's just like incredible. The day goes by so fast and I don't do anything. I don't know how this is possible. It's like some sort of time warp we're in. I wake up, I do the same thing, and then the next thing I know, it's time to go to bed. Are any of you experiencing this? It's kind of insane. The way it's just like so repetitious. It's really like that movie, Groundhog Day. Maybe we should all watch that. And I've been thinking, like, you know how we talk on the spiritual path about like being in the moment? Well, maybe what that really means is I'm going to sound very woo-woo now. There's no such thing really as time or repetition. There's just one long moment. And we're really getting to feel that these days without the interruption of the constant doing. We're really more and more forced into being. And it feels kind of uncomfortable, even though that's what we claimed we were interested in, just being in the moment. Well, this is one big fat moment that could go on for a long time. And I have found it helpful to be as fully present and awake to this big, extended, boring, repetitious moment and use that as my practice. Sandy A., she says, I'm struggling with judgment. How do I handle what others are or are not doing? Well, that's like one of my big poor attitudes, as Viktor Frankl would say, judgmentalness. I do a lot of judging prior to COVID-19 and during. I have to work on that in myself, being judgmental about what other people are doing. As if, P.S., I'm not doing the exact same things, but I just can't see it. So I have been starting on that with the political figures I love to judge. Here's one thing. Now, I live in New York, so you may not have been watching our governor, Cuomo. If any of you have been watching Governor Cuomo, he's on every morning. He's been a hero. He's been amazing. He's been kind and big and strong. He's been this. Whoever would have thought? And I've noticed how prior to now, I spent a whole lot of time judging the man, not liking him, not liking what he's doing. And now I'm liking him because he's doing what I want. Not liking him, liking him. This is what I do all the time with the people in my life, with political figures. with friends and colleagues. I think it's a fantastic opportunity now, since our circles are so small, just the people in our house, just the closest people to us, to start practicing non-judgmentalness on someone like your husband or your wife or your kids. That's the hardest, actually. And checking yourself over and over. I think I'll choose an attitude now of loving kindness and acceptance instead of what I'd like to do. And I swear, if that's the only spiritual practice we chose during this time, we would have made great use of this time. Forget the watercoloring and the cleaning out your closets and your taxes. If you could be more accepting of the people in your life with real love, real tolerance, starting with yourself, tolerance toward yourself, gentleness toward yourself, if you could do that, you would have made great use of this time. Me too. Susan asks for my best book recommendation. Well, it depends what you want. Some people really are looking to books to escape, novels. I've been reading a few novels, and I've been loving that. Like I just finished Isabel Allende's newest novel, and now I'm reading Anne Patchett's newest novel. So I like novels, but in terms of spiritual books, here are some that are made for these times. Pema Chodron's When Things Fall Apart. Could you think of a better title for this time? That is a classic. It's amazing. Pema Chodron, When Things Fall Apart. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s book, Notes from a Birmingham Jail. Any of his books, A Knock at Midnight. These are books like Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Dr. King's books, you kind of walk away from them thinking, if he could do it, I can do it. And what he did was to choose nonviolence, which is another way of what Sandy asked, struggling with judgment. Judgment is a form of violence, and Dr. King really teaches how to make change in the world through nonviolence. So those are some that I love. Let's see what else I got. Anne A. asked, do you have any advice on dealing with fear while food shopping? Who ever thought we'd have fear while food shopping? Sometimes when I go into my little local store, I have chosen only one to go to. That has helped me with my fear because I've gotten to really know where everything is, and I only go once a week. I have a lot of people I'm feeding. Myself, my husband, a son, daughter-in-law, 2 grandkids, and but I try to go only once a week. I wear gloves that I throw away. I wear a mask. Even though these things may or may not be useful at all, I would rather not have fear coursing through me than look like I'm overdoing it. You know what I mean? So I wear throwaway plastic gloves. I wear a mask that I happen to have because I had had some surgery recently and I had it from the hospital. And I go once a week and I come home and I lightly wipe off with a cloth anything that looks like maybe somebody else touched it. And then I say, I've done the best I can. And I actually do a protection of myself from fear. It's like, cut it out, stop being paranoid. You did everything the best you can. You took off your shoes, you washed your clothes, like it's clean, now let it go. I try to do all of those things and I try to stay away from people. And if somebody gets too close to me, once I actually said, hey, could you step back a little bit? But I try to be lighthearted about it. Humor's really, really helpful. I actually think it will protect us from the virus. Amy says, I forget my tools, in quotes. I think that means your meditative, spiritual, psychological tools. Any tips to remember? Sufism is the mystical dimension of Islam, and I am a student of Sufism. And the word practice, spiritual practice in the Sufi tradition means remembrance. That's what they call practice, remembrance, because we forget. So the first order of business is not to beat yourself up for forgetting, because we all forget. That's why we practice. You know, if you play the piano, you practice scales to become a great piano player. If you practice basketball drills, that's to become a great dribbler. And we practice to remember in real life. So you're not alone in your forgetting. We all forget, and that's why we practice. And the more you practice, the more you'll remember. So during these times, if you feel you're kind of like falling into holes of despair or judgment or anger or all the things attitudes you would prefer not to water, maybe really have a real practice during this time. Like every morning at 9 a.m., if you can, take 15 minutes and meditate. And that will help you remember. Read, like have a book by your bed that is about what you want to learn psychologically or spiritually, and read a chapter or a paragraph before you go to bed so that you sleep on it. And so it's like a muscle you develop. So you develop your muscle. And I think we really need that muscle developed now. Robert asks, is Omega going to be okay? Thank you. It's been a hard time at Omega, as it has been at any organization, any business, especially small businesses and organizations that are not flush with money and live from year to year, you know, paying people as best as we can, trying to raise money. We're a fundraising organization, but still we live on the edge, as most small businesses and service-oriented organizations do. So are we going to be okay? Okay is a broad thing. We are doing everything we can, first of all, to keep our staff employed and healthy and together. And we're going to do whatever we can, not only to make sure we survive, but that we thrive and change through this, make changes that we needed to make anyway, and some new ones. And we will keep you posted every step of the way how we're doing. We are working really, really hard, and it's an amazing group of people. Crises bring out the best in teams if they're a good team. And I have been moved to tears by our staff recently and how we're trying to deal with this. Thank you for asking that. So I have time for maybe 2 more questions. And someone on Facebook Live asked, how should we deal with people who have judgment toward people with COVID-19? Wow, I haven't seen that yet. I've seen people who think it's a hoax and who think we're overreacting. And if there are people who are actually judging others for getting it and maybe for spreading it, let's see, how do you be this and this in your communication in the world? It's one thing to be like this and this on the pillow, on the meditation pillow. How do you be like this in the world? Because sometimes a firm talking to is what somebody needs. But you can do it with this. I had an experience the other day. I mistakenly put the wrong digits of a phone number into a text I was sending. And whomever this wrong person was wrote back and used a 4-letter word beginning with F and ending with K, sort of yelling at me on the text, "Don't talk to me about this. Who are you? Are you spam? Blah, blah, blah." I just took some breaths and I wrote back, "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I must have transposed a digit. I'm so sorry. We're all on edge now." And then this person texted me back, "No, now I'm sorry. I shouldn't have acted like that. It's just I thought you were a spammer. I'm sorry." And that's just a very simple way of interrupting negativity with strength and positivity. Practice that. You'll get it wrong a lot, but without lecturing, practice just throwing love on fires of anger, but with strength. Okay. Here's the last one. It's a really great question. D has been thinking about, how do you hold COVID-19 as another living being? I love this. I'll tell you why. COVID-19 has been coming our way for a long time. He or she, let's call it it. It wants us to get better. It wants us to be a better species. That's the way I hold it. When I relate to it as a being, COVID-19's message is, I've come to wake you up. You are one world community now. What happens in China happens in America. What happens in Turkey happens in New Zealand. We have linked the world. And now we have to get responsible about it. There's beauty in our unity, but we have hurt the environment. We have polluted the environment. There is violence, misunderstandings. I have come to show you that you can do better, that you can, there's been a lot of environmental news that waters are cleaner, like in the Venice canals, skies are cleaner in China and Los Angeles. COVID-19 is showing us, when you slow down, the great slowdown, there's healing that happens. Can we do that without a virus? That's what she's saying. Can you do this without a virus? Let me teach you. That's one way of looking at it. Well, we've come to the end of our time together. We're going to be offering other things like this through the Omega community, through our teachers and other people. We have a Facebook group. It's called the Omega Online Community. You can, we're going to post it on the screen after I'm done. You can join it, and through it, find out all the other things we're going to offer, keep together, communicate with each other, and we're going to be getting that up to speed as we go along. Thank you for joining me. I love you, and I pray for all of our health and strength and your families and our whole community. Bye.